Hi everybody. I'm sorry I've been away for a few days. It's been kind of crazy around here getting our hay in and all that. So here we are. I'm going to start with chapter 19 and hopefully I won't mess this one up too bad. I'm still stumbling over words to bear with me. Okay, the holidays come and was gone in no time at all, and the new year was upon us, and it started out like the rest. It was cold and we weren't prepared for what was to come. We burned coal in all of the rooms, and none of them was warm. The coal smelled like poop. I guess fossil fizzled out of it, or so to speak. There's a funny in there someplace. Anyhow, I was going to school and doing pretty good. The writing with your arm was a pain in the butt. In later years, I saw where it paid off. I was sitting at the head of the class one day, and Miss Idad was showing us how to be a jumping jack. It was kind of a leg and arm builder. She had a little song that went with it, something like, "This jumping jack is a funny old man. He jumps and he jumps as fast as he can. His feet fly out and his hands do too. Mr. Jumping Jack, how do you do?" She would bow to us and we in turn would bow to her. Seems as she got to going and couldn't stop when it came a time to halt. She just kept getting it up. I could see that she was in trouble because her face was turning red and she commenced to buckle in at the knees and she was a-shaking all over. I ran into the other classroom where Miss Yancey was and I told her what was happening. Miss Yancey came over and gave all of us a recess until she could get the old gal going again. She went away after that and I took the mumps. A woman came over and tacked a piece of paper on our door and wouldn't let any of us go outside of the property. Soon as I got over the mumps, I took the measles, the red that is, and the whole family had them, and the mumps too. The paper hung on our house for quite a spell, and then I didn't get to go back to school until April. One thing that did happen for good is while we were sick, it snowed about a foot, and Ma went out and got a big pan of it and made snow cream. That sure was good on my hot guts and throat. The same day, Ma scooped up some of the ashes from the fireplace, and Ma told Rot to take them out and pour them on the back steps because there was a slick and the ashes would give a better footing when the coal was brought in. He went to the back door and started to do as he was bid. This old hound dog was a-sniffing around and looking for whatever he could find to eat or pee in the yard or something. Wright had a few passes with his bucket when he lost his footing. The bucket went first and then came Wright. The bucket went bam, 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 with ashes flying all over. Then here come old Wright, a-hollering, a-grabbing for anything in sight to get a hold of, as his butt was a-hitting the hard ice. The old hound dog just couldn't get a hold of what was happening to him, and he bellied down to take off and get out of there. But the more he ran, the less he got any place. He was a-spinning on all four wheels, clawing to get traction. He was a-hollering, and a-pouring it on old Wright, and the bucket hit the bottom and slid out in the yard, ashes and all. But then the old hound had hit the ground and went by all of the commotion and a winding for the great outdoors. Ma comes to the door and shouts, "Lord of mercy, what's all this racket?" And then she saw Wright. "Are you hurt, son?" she asked. "Nah, I guess not. I just busted my butt on them steps is all." He hadn't bothered to even get up. And he still sat there on the ground. "Why, you get up from that frozen ground before you get your death of pneumonia or a cold." He got up and cooned up the stairs and came back in the house. Ma sort of looked him over and didn't find anything broken, so she went about doing whatever she had been doing before all the commotion. Finally, we all got over the measles, mumps, and what have you, and we all went back to school. We didn't have long to go before school was out that year, and I was sure glad and ready for the summer. Just before we quit for the school year, there came this thing with lice on one of the girls at schools. One of the girls put a louse in Sue's hair, and Ma worked many a nights at getting them off of her. The girls' names were Gentry or something like that. Everybody kept a-getting on their paw to get rid of them lice and to stop letting them bring 'em to school. I guess Mr. Gentry got mad and shaved all the kids' heads. They came to school, and the teacher told them to take off their hats while in the room. They didn't want to at all, and they froze onto their hats. Now the teacher came down on them and made them uncover their heads. I'm here to tell you, them kids' heads were blue if I'd ever seen any. The teacher lowed for them to put their hats back on, and they sure were glad. The folks didn't get after old Gentry after that anymore. There was something else that happened to us that spring, though. Some of the kids at school had the 7-year itch. They called it scabies or whatever, and we got it, and we took it back home. Now Ma was fit to be tied with all the measles and the mumps and the lice, and now the 7-year itch. All of us kids was a clawing and a scratching like a blue tick with red mange. The health lady came out and told Ma what to do for it. It was some stuff called an insecticide or something to that effect. You mixed up 2 tubs, sort of like sheep dip. Then you defrocked a young'un and soused him in the first tub until he couldn't stand it, and then you put him in the other. By this time, you won't be able to hold him, for his butt will be on fire, and he'll be heading for tall timber. They had this one room where we had to go to dry off. Not with a towel, but we had to stay there till you dried off natural-like. Then you put your clothes back on, and you wore them for a day or 2 with the insecticide on you. They started off with Wright. Ma had a hard time with him because he was a strong fella. Finally, she got a hammerlock on him and beat him to the task. When his hind end, that was already raw, hit that stuff, he commenced to holler, "Don't! Stop! Oh, stop!" Ma lifted him up and soused him into the other, and that was just as bad. "Lord of mercy, get me the heck out of this hellfire," he cried. Then Ma let him go, and he made a dive for the empty room and danced around. Well, sir, it was my turn next, and I had seen how Wright had fared. I knew it won't be nothing that I could do, but to take it like a man or whatever. Ma put me in the first tub. Honestly, I don't believe biling a fellow would have been much worse. It was like sticking a hot poker to your groin. I hollered and cried and fought, but to no avail. Ma pulled me up and put me in the other one. When I hit the air, it felt like a blasted furnace was a-hitting me. I made for the other room. We stayed in there for an hour or 2. Then they let us put our clothes on. I walked like a spavin hoss for a week, but the itch was cured. We peeled off and got new skin and no itch. They said kill or cure, kill the itch, or it darn near killed me. That summer, I met up with Lidget King. He was a pretty good friend, and we went to the old swimming hole and did things like that when I weren't working the shoebox. One day, he says, I know where they used to sell liquor and had a bar like in the movies. Well, sir, back in them days, the movies was Tom Mix and Tom Tyler and Rin Tin Tin, several others of the silent movies, stage 2. Voice was up the road a piece for our town. Anyways, he wanted me to go with him because the place had been boarded up in the Prohibition days, or that era. I was a little hesitant, but in the end, I went with him. It was over to the east of town, down near an old fairground. It was a long building, and honeysuckles was a-growing all around the place, and black locusts with the sticker briars and brambles, Pa had called them. How are we going to get to see anything, I asked him. We went around on the far side, and there didn't look like no place to get in at all. Lidget cases a joint and comes back and motions for me to come over. There was a flap of honeysuckle. He lifted me up, and we crawled in, and they fell back in place. There was this trap door that only opened a small amount, and we crawled through it. It had a musky smell from the lack of use. There was a long bar with a mirror in the back that someone had broken in the middle. There were no stools, just a long bar with a long brass rail in front of the bar. There was a bunch of old tables and chairs. Pictures on the walls of girls in the nude, and pictures of some of the bad guys of the days. There was a lot of bottles, but I wouldn't have opened any of them. I told Lidget if he did, I was going to leave. Won't nobody know, he says. Like heck they won't. Don't you think that they can smell that on your breath when you go home? I hain't thought about that, he says. Well, I guess the sheriff closed this place, and if they catch us in here, they'll put us in jail. So don't mess with things. Just look and let that be enough. We played a while that we were cowboys and come in out from the range. We hung our heels over the rail and made out that we had guns and all the things that we had seen in the movies. We had a good time, and when we left, we didn't leave any mess to tell that we had been there. The next few weeks went by with any mishaps. One day, after I had come back from shoe shining, Lidget comes up to the house and asked me what I was going to do that evening. I don't have anything pressing, I said. The shoe shine business is poor today, and I quit selling them papers, so what do you have in mind? You know that long tall boy, about 16, that comes up the railroad track on the other side of the lot, he asked. Yeah, I know him. At least I seen him every once in a while. His name's Buck Powell, and his pa, John Powell, has this one that's always drunk and drinks anything that has a kick to it. Shoe shine polish, shaving lotion, or whatever. Old Buck is his only son. His former wife died in South Boston and had a girl by him, and they sent her to John, and he ain't in no shape to help her one way or the other. I hear old Buck's been playing house with her. I was over there the other day because they live just across the town from us, across the railroad. They've got some cross ties put up in a square, and we put a top over them, and we had a good time playing house. You want to go with me this afternoon, he asked. Yeah, I'd like to do that. As soon as I bust Mom some stove wood, I got the wood and I put it in the kitchen under the stove. Lidget and me went down to the railroad tracks to the Powell's house. When we got near, we saw her playing in the playhouse. Her name was Helen, and I told her mine was Skeeter. That's a funny name, she giggled. The boys at school gave it to me, I said. She was about 8 or 9, and she came right out and said to us, I bet you guys want to play house. We sure do, we both lowed. Well, first we have to have us a meal before we go to bed, she says, and she put some buckets and lids on a cross ties. Now you sit over there, and Lidget sits over here, she said, and we made like we was eating out of the lids. We were having a good old time when Buck walks up. What you bums doing over here messing with my girl, he says. Were you just playing? Helen told him. We were just playing, Helen told him. Well, I won't beat you up this time, but you stay away from here in the future. Old Lidget and me snuck out and made it out of there. We went down to the creek and we went swimming and had us a lot of fun until night. We didn't get back to Helen's after that. We were afraid that Buck would get us, and after seeing him, we knew that we didn't have a chance. Ma asked me where I'd been with Lidget, and I told her that we'd been swimming. Supper was boiled cabbage and fried potatoes and cornbread. I ate that which was given to me with no trouble at all. There were the whippoorwills that night but I slept real good anyways, listening to the dry prize working just down the street below us. I rose the next morning and Ma gave us some fat meat, fried, and biscuits with butter and lasses. We all drank coffee, from the little ones to the big ones, so I had coffee. After I had brought Ma some wood, we did whatever she wanted of me. After I did whatever she wanted of me, I was pretty much on my own. There was a hollering outside, and Sissy Scarborough wanted me to play hopscotch with her. She always won, and I didn't like to lose all the time, but I took her on anyways. We drew out the ladder. It had 3 up and 2 across, 1 up and 2 across. The way you played was you put a piece of slate and you throw it in all the squares starting at 1, and you jump over your slate and proceed to jump in all of the others. You held up 1 foot on all of the ones and put both feet down on the cross ones. Confusing, ain't it? Well, sir, we had played this game for a long while, and I was pretty good at it, but Sissy was a master. Any time you jump on the line or missed throwing your slate in the right space, you had to let the other feller have a go at it till he or she missed. That Sissy could go in all of them sometime without missing a trick. This morning I had made up my mind that she was not going to beat me if I got the first turn, and we tossed her the first try. What we did was we'd spit on a stick or a flat piece of board and throw it in the air, turning as she went. If you chose the dry and it came up wet, well, the rest is self-explanatory. This morning I chose wet, and we chucked her up into the air. She went pretty high and finally landed in some weeds, but it didn't land flat, so we had to throw her again. Since I'm going to beat you anyway, she said, do you want to change from wet to dry? No, I started off with wet, and wet she'll be. She flung her again, and she went into the air and landed in the road. The road went right by our house, so we had no trouble reading it. Well, sir, she was wet, sure as you were born, and I had the first drag at her. I had several choices of some slates and had me a dandy. She was flat and slid right into place. I hitched up my gallows and commenced to go at it for all I was worth. Lindbergh didn't have more trouble with his plane than I had with Sissy. I flung her the first 3 times, and she went off slicker than a peeled onion. Then I went for the across one, and these were the hard ones. I hit the left cross and jumped up and threw into the one and came down and turned without hitting a line. I went back and picked up my slate and didn't even stagger. Most times I'd always fell if I had to reach too far. The next ones all went well, and I could feel Sissy getting uneasy. My slate fell almost on the line at the end of my turn, and we had an argument on what it was on the line or not, but she finally gave in and went on to the finish, and I beat her for the first time. The next time she beat me, but I felt good about myself because I had beaten her one game. Next we played Bob Jacks with rocks, and I did manage to hold my own with her. We were sitting and playing jacks, and she asked me if I'd had a girlfriend. No, I lowed. I'm not old enough to have a girlfriend. I'm only 8, going on 9. Well, sir, I'm 9, and I want you to be my boyfriend and nobody else. You'll have to give up all the rest. That's the way we have to be with each other, because you can play with the boys and I can play with the girls. That sounds pretty good to me, but I'll have to think about it. Since we're going to be friends, we got to kiss and seal the deal. I don't know, sissy. I ain't never kissed anyone before, not even my ma. I don't know how to kiss a girl. Well, that's easy to fix, she said, and she leans over and kissed me. Now that ain't the way to kiss. Let me show you how. You make your lips soft and part them a little, and when mine touches yours, you sort of draw on them a little. The next time I did better. We did it several times, and I was getting pretty good, but Ma saw us and come to the porch. What are you young'uns a-doing? She hollered. Looks like you're a-fixin' to fornicate. Sissy, you get on home. I don't want you leading my boy astray. Why, the next time you might be a-wanting my boy to know you. This just ain't no telling where it'll end. Why, I read a parable the other night where that city Sodom and Gomorrah, or something like that, and all them fellers was a-loving one another, and all of them was at it to beat all. And that's the end of chapter 19. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'm trying to not stumble over my words, but I just can't do it. Anyway, I hope you guys are enjoying it and get the gist of what I'm saying. And I will try to get another chapter going here pretty soon. I will talk to you guys later. Thanks for listening. Bye.